The Duval Rundown is brought to you by Injury Care Centers. Same-day injury care, no ER lines. Now here's your host, Gus Logue.
Oh, here we go. Good morning, good afternoon, rather. Welcome to episode 34 of Duval Rundown. My name is Gus Logue. I'm joined today by Coach Dave Campo, our coach here at 1010XL. He's a former NFL coach, head coach of the Dallas Cowboys. Also was an assistant head coach and assistant coach with the Jaguars for a few years. And now, like I said, he's our coach here at 1010XL. He co-hosts the Campo and Joe podcast with Joe Cowart. He's also making a lot of appearances on XL Primetime right in the fifth quarter. And so I'm very much looking forward to having Coach on for the second time on this show. But we're going to start out like we do each time with some Jaguars trivia. We'll see if Coach can get this answer right. The Jaguars allowed over 50 points for the second time in franchise history on Sunday. When was the first such occurrence? Was it 1995 against the Lions, 1998 against the Vikings, 2015 against the Patriots, or 2022 against the Patriots? Coach, you got a guess for this one?
Boy, I'll tell you what, I'm not very good at this trivia stuff. and I'm going to say the 95 Detroit Lions.
That was the previous worst loss in franchise history. It was 44-0, but they did not get to 50. The correct answer was 2015 against the Patriots, but in 2022, the Patriots also got to 50, but only 50 rather than going over. But yeah, either way you slice it, Sunday's game against the Lions was definitely one of the worst, if not the worst, loss in franchise history.
Well, the Patriots, even when I was here back in 5, 6, and 7, of course, we played them in the playoffs. Mm-hmm. And, that doesn't surprise me that it was a Patriots team that did it because obviously they were an outstanding unit.
Absolutely. They definitely have been for a long time. They're continuing to impress even with Bill Belichick kind of out of the equation now, but they've definitely got a quarterback in Drake May.
Yeah.
But the story around Jacksonville right now this week is about Doug Pederson and really the whole coaching staff and front office because expectations, not just in Jacksonville for fans, but it seemed like nationally or among media outlets too, was that there was going to be changes to the coaching staff for sure if the Jaguars ended up getting embarrassed in Detroit the way that they did. And they did get embarrassed. It was a horrible loss, and yet there's been no changes and no comments made from the top of the organization. And so are you surprised that there hasn't been changes, or are you not that thrown off by it?
Well, you know what? I'm not that surprised. I think some of the national media, with the bye week coming up and such a embarrassing loss and some struggles this year, it's all speculation. And I think they get everybody riled up by coming out and Schefter comes out and says, well, it could be this or it might be this. He didn't really say anything. He just said, hey, there's a chance. And the one thing about Shad Khan, maybe loyal to a fault, but in general, and it happens, obviously, but in general, I don't think owners like to fire a bunch of people during the season because it really – you're kind of saying, hey, the season's over. And yet they could go on a 5 games left? They could go
6
on
games
6
left,
games.
right.
They could go on 6-game winning streak.
Mm-hmm.
Not likely. But that brings people still coming into the stands. And every game up until this one has been one that the fans at least can, know that it's coming down to the wire and it's at least exciting, even though it isn't the finality of it wasn't as good as they expected. So I'm not completely surprised. I think there might be some changes within the staffing as far as who does what. But, as far as major changes, I don't see it.
Yeah, and it would even be more major for the Jaguars because the assumption is that if Doug Pederson was let go, then Press Taylor will be following him out the door. And so it'd be tough just for the sake of organization in the building for the rest of the year, right? To lose kind of 2 of your top guys in the coaching staff, especially on the offense.
They've got Mike McCoy there, who's been a head coach, has been a play caller. That would be, in my mind, if they went in that direction, that's the direction they would go. But still, I'd like to see how the rest of the season plays out.
For sure. Now, you have been an NFL coach. Unfortunately, you've also been fired as a coach. And so what was your mentality like? Were you able to just kind of keep your head down and keep yourself and the team going to work, or was it a little bit tough to kind of drown out the outside noise, even if there wasn't as much social media and whatever back then.
Well, you're getting paid to play 16 or 17 games
Mhm.
now, so you approach it. Really, I approached it like it was another day at the office, and tried to point out the things that we had to do to be a better football player next week, whoever we were playing, what the situation was. So, I had a pretty good idea with 3 or 4 games left that it wasn't going to work out.
Mhm.
But at the same time, I really wanted to make sure that no one said that our guys mailed it in.
Mm.
So from a competitive standpoint, I approached it with the idea that, hey, we're going to get ready to play next week. We don't know what's going to happen. And especially now, the league is built on parity.
Mhm.
So there's no guarantee from week to week what's going to happen. Unfortunately, there was a rough week this week.
Mhm.
But overall, there's no guarantee that anybody will beat us. There's no guarantee that we can't beat the Houston Texans. We've played them and played them well.
Mhm.
So that's the approach that I took at the time, and I think that's the approach they will take as well.
Yeah, the Jags have lost 9 games this season, but only 2 of them, I believe, both last week against the Lions and then week 3 against the Bills, were the only losses that were by more than 1 score.
Right.
So you're definitely right. It's a week-to-week league
Right.
where anything can happen. Maybe they can go on a little bit of a run. I think that's what some fans are a little bit scared of, is that they might go on a
Right.
run and convince ownership to kind of not make any changes. But we'll see what happens. I think since it is the bye week for the Jaguars, it's a good time to kind of just look in the rearview mirror of what we've seen through the first 11 weeks of the season. So I know this is a difficult question, but starting out with the offense, if there's just one thing that you can point to that's gone wrong, what would it be?
I would say the front, the offensive line.
Okay.
I think they made a serious mistake in a couple areas, and we're going to talk about defense probably in a bit.
Totally.
But from an offensive standpoint, I think they made a bad decision on basically, other than the center,
Mhm.
standing pat with the offensive line. I feel that, especially the interior guys, you got an older guy in Sheriff, you got at one guard, the other guard, you got Cleveland, who's had a bunch of injuries.
Mhm.
You bring in a center that logistically is probably better as far as, being able to technique-wise do something better than Fortner did. But as far as physicalness, he's no different than Fortner.
Yeah.
So I don't think the interior guys, the ability to run the football, a lot of it is based on double teams and inside pulls by the guards,
Mhm.
Getting involved in the game. And I don't think we did a very good job there. So you win up front. And I'm
Mhm.
probably going to say the same thing about defense,
Yeah.
but you win up front.
Mhm.
And I don't think we did enough there as far as that goes. And I think we need to get better. And I don't think we can do it by bringing old souls in here.
Mm.
I think we need to get some young guys that are physical. And you look at the 2 teams that played this weekend, there's no question who was more physical. Coming off the football, getting after people. They had running backs going 5 yards down the field,
Mhm.
and the linemen with them.
Yeah.
Normally they're into the second
Just getting
level,
pushed backwards,
but
right?
it was just an ugly affair there. So I think their offensive line is a lot better than ours, and even though I think we improved some in pass drops as far as protecting the quarterbacks,
Yeah.
as far as the run game is concerned, I don't think we did anything.
No, it's been pretty brutal, and especially with Ezra Cleveland out of the lineup, where he's certainly not playing at a Pro Bowl level, but when he
Right.
missed the Eagles game in Week 10, especially when there's times when there's guards pulling into combo blocks, like you were mentioning, and even just going from kind of a replacement level player to a certainly below average player makes a huge difference. And so, looking forward, Travis Hunter would be pretty tough to turn down at the first overall pick, but I think it's fair for Jaguars fans to want to build up the offensive line, especially with a franchise quarterback in place who you want to protect. But would that be the thing that you think needs to be fixed the most going forward as we look to the future, whether it's this year or next year, and regardless of the coaching staff?
Absolutely. Whoever's here next year has got to address that situation.
Totally.
You win the game in the trenches, and we're not winning the game in the trenches.
So is it the same thing for you on the defensive side of the ball when you look back through the first 11 weeks of the season?
Yeah. I think there's been some mistakes, and in a way, I'm kind of indicting the general manager here. I don't know. The one thing I don't know, Gus, is what's the head coach general manager relationship as far as who's doing what on, personnel and all those kind of things. So I have to be a little careful there because I don't know what the relationship is. But I'll say this: you got a guy in Armstead, for example, that comes in and says, "Well, I want to play defensive end." He's a defensive tackle. In a 3-4, or in a 4-3, he's a tackle.
Yeah.
But he's out there playing, defensive end in the pass rush, and he's not good enough. I mean, he just period. So because of that, they don't take another pass rusher. So now we got 2 pass rushers that are not super great, but they're, the combination of the 2 are pretty good, but we have nobody else. And so now our interior of the defensive line is hurting because the guy that should be in there giving him a little bit of pass rush inside. And by the way, percentage-wise, his pressure rate is way higher this year at tackle.
I think it might be triple that at
tackle. Than it is at end. So those kind of things, I would have to say the same thing. You have got to get some people up front that can control the run game, but also put some pressure on the quarterback. And I don't think we've done that this year. And if you had to say what one thing, actually our run defense held up decent early, but now, because of the struggles of the offense and the defense being more of a bend but don't break operation, they're on the field too long. The bye week can't come too early for those guys. They're tired.
They're exhausted.
So that's an issue right there. So to go forward, they have to get the guys up front. And all said and done, we haven't been great in the secondary. But if you put everything together, the lack of pressure on the quarterback and stopping the run is what hurts us more than anything on defense as well. So you win the game in the trenches, and I think that's the key on both sides of the ball.
Yeah, I think you're totally right about Armstead, where maybe if he was playing a few edge snaps on early downs to be able to contain the edge and contain the edge against the run, especially on those early downs, if that makes sense. But like you said, with the lack of depth across the entire defensive line, but especially at edge, he's been having to be playing edge more often on late downs when you're rushing a passer. And as you said, he's been much, much more effective playing or rushing from the inside, which he did for 9 years in San Francisco to great ability. And so definitely they need more depth on both lines, better starters too, probably. And so, yeah, I'm right there with you. You heard it here, folks. You got to invest in the trenches in order to turn this franchise around.
No question. And, they did a good thing with Thomas coming in. You got to have a couple guys that can make plays for you, obviously. But I think overall it's the trenches that they have to make the most improvement in.
Totally.
All
right, Coach. Thank you so much for joining. Really appreciate your time. We will be back on Thursday with Mia to just talk more, just general review of the Jaguars as they enter their Week 12 bye. So for Coach Campo, I'm Gus Logue. Thank you to everyone for tuned in. I just got to find my goodbye advertisement, and we'll be out of here. See you guys on Thursday.
Go Jags.
Go Jags.
The Duval Rundown has been brought to you by Injury Care Centers. Your path to recovery starts here.